Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, talking about America's white supremacy problem. During the 1960s, Malcolm X said, "The white liberal is the worst enemy to America and the worst enemy to the black man. If the Negro wasn't taken, tricked, or deceived by the white liberal, the Negroes would get together and solve our own problems." I grew up surrounded by white liberals and have spent a fair amount of time in the black community, and I know exactly what Malcolm X was talking about. 1 year ago, I moved away from Boulder, Colorado, a city which is almost entirely populated by white liberals. The only city I've lived in as an adult that's less diverse than Boulder, Colorado is Bernie Sanders' hometown of Burlington, Vermont. And interestingly, the downtown areas of Burlington and Boulder were both designed by the same person. This is Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, and this is Church Street in Burlington, Vermont. They have many of the same stores, and they're both wonderful places for white liberals to hang out with other white liberals. Here's a brand new article from a professor at the University of Colorado. White people are the main perpetrators of anti-Asian racism and violence, but white supremacy is still the problem when blacks and Latinos attack Asians. I agree with the author because I believe that white liberals are the ultimate white supremacists. Let's start by looking at the facts. She says white people are the main perpetrators of anti-Asian racism and violence. But the actual data from the FBI shows that the author is lying. In violent crimes targeting Asians, 24% of the perpetrators are white, 27.5% are black, 7% are Hispanic, and 24% are other Asians. As a proportion of the population, white people and Hispanics are the least likely to commit violent crimes against Asians. The most likely perpetrators as a percentage of population are other Asians or black people. In 1992, during the LA riots, which started after Rodney King was killed by the police, Koreans were the primary target of the rioters. More than 2,200 Korean-owned businesses were looted, completely destroyed, or damaged during the LA riots. Koreans had nothing to do with Rodney King's death, but they were the targets of the rioters, and white liberals called this social justice. And the same thing happened during the Baltimore riots in 2015 after Freddie Gray died in police custody. Koreans had nothing to do with the death of Freddie Gray, but they were the primary target of the rioters. I was living in Columbia, Maryland, a few miles away, which is a city dominated by white liberals. But I chose to live in an apartment there where I was the only white person because I find white liberals extremely annoying. Most of my neighbors there were black and the rest were Asian. None of them ever started a conversation with me about global warming or other white liberal neuroses. They were busy living their lives and raising their children, and many of them had moved to Columbia to escape the gangs in Baltimore. So the claim in the CU article that white people are the main perpetrators is simply not true. But the second half of her sentence is true, as she demonstrates herself. She said, white supremacy is still the problem when blacks and Latinos attack Asians. In other words, she believes that blacks and Latinos are not responsible for their own actions. I've been around white liberals all my life, and they believe that they're morally and intellectually superior to everybody else. They believe that people with darker skin need their help. They believe that white people are responsible for all the world's problems and thus are the only people who can solve them. White liberals are the very definition of white supremacists. They go around pointing fingers at white conservatives, but it's the white liberals who are projecting their own behavior. This is exactly what Malcolm X was saying. If the Negro wasn't taken, tricked, or deceived by the white liberal, the Negroes would get together and solve our own problems. But the author of this article is saying that blacks, Latinos, and Asians can't solve their own problems. They can only be solved by white people. It's difficult to imagine any attitude more racist. Last year in Chicago, about 10 people were shot by gangs every single day. Chicago's been run by Democrats for 100 years. They've made a complete mess out of the city, and they don't want to talk about it. So white liberals ignore all the black men, women, and children being shot in Chicago and other Democrat-run cities every day. They go to their Black Lives Matter protests, but they don't really care about black people at all. You very rarely see black people in Boulder, and the white liberal population has done everything they could to keep it that way. But when my old supermarket in Boulder was shot up 2 weeks ago by a Syrian angry about Democrats bombing his country, suddenly white liberals started caring because it was 10 white people shot in Boulder rather than 10 black people get shot every day in Chicago. I now live in Cheyenne, Wyoming, which is a military town and has a very diverse population. Wyoming is also the most Republican state in the country. People in Cheyenne get along great, and I'm enjoying life here with my fiancée Kyrie from Japan, who's a well-known climate skeptic like myself, but she's also a jewelry maker extraordinaire. We have to go down to Colorado fairly often for shopping, but we're very happy to be up here in Wyoming, away from the crazed white liberals of the Front Range of Colorado. And of course, you can visit Toto and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.